Hey everyone, this is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And this is
Season 7 of Pero Let Me Tell You. You really do.
I do. I like everything cold.
Yes.
I like my house cold. I don't have a cold heart. But
No,
aside
no,
from
that's
everything,
true. That's
I
true.
like everything cold. I like
Yes.
my out.
Paul Abdul was not singing about you.
I'm all about Andre 3000. What's colder than cold? Ice cold.
Yeah.
That's how I live my life.
Yep.
I like my house cold. I like the water cold. I like my drinks super cold.
You do.
I put ice in soups.
Yes. It's a little unnerving. The degree of cold.
With that coldness, welcome to episode 308, everyone. Viste?
I think it's 309.
309. It was bound to happen.
And so it begins.
So welcome to episode 309. Wait, our 300th episode was 9 weeks ago? A whole 9-week semester?
Yes. We should be getting our report card soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
All A1As, please.
Well, fingers crossed.
¿Cómo está todo el mundo? Are we supporting Team USA or whatever respective team you want to support?
Yes, but yes, I think everybody's supporting their respective teams. It's go insert team here.
Yeah. ¿Cómo tú te tomas la sopa? Yo me tomo la sopa super. I don't like hot soup.
I don't think anybody has ever transitioned from Team USA support
I'll
to
tell you
how
something.
you take your soup.
I don't like hot soup, but I don't like gazpacho.
I like my soup not scalding hot because I need to taste it. But yes, I need, soup has to have. If not, it's just water.
To me, I like it a little bit above room temperature.
Yeah, that's fine. Like that's okay. Yeah. I don't need it scalding hot.
Esta gente que se comen una sopa that's still boiling, I'm like, how? Like, how?
They don't have taste buds.
No, that's why when I order soup in a restaurant, haven't you ever noticed when I order soup in a restaurant?
I really haven't.
Yeah, when I order soup in a restaurant, like whatever beverage I'm drinking, I'll like take a gulp, suck the ice, like get the ice and then put it in the soup.
Oh, I'm gonna notice now.
To cool it down.
I'm gonna notice
cool
that now.
It down.
Oh, that was cool. No, that was
New edition.
New edition.
You gotta lose control. Cool it down. No, it's a cool it down. Cool it down. It's cool it down.
Is it cool it down or cool it, girl?
No, it's cool it down. Well, cool down the soup.
Exactly.
Suelta la sopa.
Suelta la sopa.
No, I don't know. I think there's something that happens. I'm not a coffee drinker.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I don't like coffee.
Because it's hot.
Because it's hot.
But you don't drink iced coffee either.
No.
So therefore, it's not about that.
Because
it's not
I
about
think
the
that
temperature.
iced coffee has an even greater aftertaste. And I don't like anything with an aftertaste.
Right. So it's not about the temperature. Let's not pretend it's about the temperature.
Well, it's not about the temperature as to why I don't drink coffee, but I don't like anything that hot. I don't like really hot tea. Again, I put a piece of ice in it.
Well, yeah, but you'll have cold tea. Like you will have an iced tea. You'll have an
and
Palmer.
I'm the type that you've seen that when I drink Coke or something, I'll put it in the freezer. So when you pour it out, it has a little bit of icicles, but I still
little sludge. Yeah.
But I still put ice in the drink.
It's just not normal. It's just not right.
I like things really cold.
No, clearly, but it ain't right.
Don't you remember a couple of weeks ago we were, last week we were at Brewlihan for Pampollo, which shout out to Brewlihan in
John
in Hollywood and their mead.
Oakland Park.
Oakland Park. They do mead there, and I mean, as I said, who knew that in my 40s I was going to learn that I like mead?
I know. Well, I mean, and you did have a Red Bull based mead.
It's delicious. Yes. But anyway, they make the mead there, and he has like a cold storage room. And the other day I went in, and I'm like, this is perfect. Like this is. Yeah. I think it's like 20 degrees in there.
I think you actually asked if you could put an office in there.
Yeah, I was like, can you move this cold storage to my house? Because I am good living in here like this.
It's like this is perfect. Why is it the whole house like that?
I mean, isn't it? I mean, the power bill will be crazy.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, people, don't you like to be in a really, really cold room?
I do, but I like to be in a cold room when I have like a blanket.
Yeah, to get cozy, right?
Right, yes,
of course.
Yes,
well,
yes.
I'm not going to be in a cold room in underwear and, a tank top.
Well, but see, that's why I can't always be in a cold room. Like, that's why my apartment is like at 78 degrees.
Yeah, that's why when I go
naked.
What do I do every time I go to your apartment?
You lower the AC.
I go and I start going.
Right, but you have to understand that I'm always half naked at my house. Therefore,
you have two things.
I can't be cold.
You do two things in your like living quarters that I don't know how you do them. You have the air at 78, but then when you're there, if you're on your computer or you're working, you don't have any like background noise. You don't have the TV on.
No.
Nothing.
No.
I cannot be in silence. Silence freaks me out.
No, I'm cool with it.
You'll know sometimes I come in and I'm like, you're just sitting there in your laptop, like working, and like nothing is on, not the radio, not the TV. To me, I put on the TV. I don't even like to have the radio on. I put on the TV because, especially if I'm alone, because I don't feel alone. I feel like tengo compañía. Like people, like listeners, don't you do that? Like,
You're never alone when you're with yourself.
You know what? I'll never forget this fun story. When I moved to Michigan, remember you helped me move?
Yeah, of course.
Right? I remember the night you left. That was like the first night I had ever been anywhere like that I lived alone.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like 25. You know?
No, yeah, that makes total sense.
And I remember that I hadn't gotten cable yet.
Oh, so you didn't really have TV.
I didn't have TV yet. And I hadn't gotten the internet yet, so I didn't have my laptop to watch something on. And I sort of went a little nuts that night for like 2 nights because I'm like, what do I do? It's like silent in here. I was like, I think I'm going to go hang out at Walmart or like Myers. Myers is like the Walmart of the Midwest. Well, no, it's much nicer.
Yeah.
Because I can't stand being like in silence. Is anybody out there like that too? Like it freaks me out like to be in total silence.
I'm okay with it.
Even when I was like, for example, in law school or even in college,
right.
I couldn't go to one of those study rooms.
Oh no, I would go. Well, I would also just fall asleep. But yeah,
I could go. I would like to study in the main floor. You know, when there's some noise,
ambient noise.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
Logo. See, you know what freaks me out? I mean, send me to the middle of the ocean in a storm. Send me to space. Do not send me to those rooms where it's like so silent that you could hear your heartbeat and your blood rush.
Oh, yeah.
That freaks me.
That's weird.
Okay, no, but there's people that do it because they want to experience it.
Like those like what Michael Jackson had, like the hyperbaric chambers. Yeah, I can't do that.
Okay, that freaks me out.
I can't.
That's why I was like, send me to the middle of the Atlantic in a storm. Send me to space. Send me in a submarine. Do not put me in the room.
No. Yeah, no, that I couldn't do. But no, just to be like at home. You know, if I'm working on something, and there are times where I just need to like concentrate, and other noises will distract me, so I have to be in silence.
You know the thing,
especially
also,
if I'm drafting emails.
You know the thing that as much as I love music, when I want to concentrate, you know how I need that noise, but I don't like to listen to music because then I'll start singing along. Like my mind will start going with the lyrics of the song.
Okay. Right? But see, I can do music more than TV in that sense.
Oh yeah,
because I can almost turn the music into just background noise.
Because I could just see myself like writing an email, this mediation is set for so date. Since city's cold and empty, no one's around.
But see, my problem with it being TV is that if it's something that I haven't seen before, I have to pay attention to the TV. And if it's something that I saw before, it's because I love it. No, it's because I love it and I want to watch it again. Yeah. So I'm distracted.
So please take this as your formal notice. Please govern yourself accordingly. I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep. Sincerely, dear Borges. I can't sleep until and they're like, damn it, I need to concentrate. But the weekend won't let me.
No, the weekend won't let most of us concentrate.
I know, right? That's why you have so much fun in the weekend. Beat double entendre.
See how we do.
So there's a lot to talk about this week.
Just a few things.
Where do we want to start?
Do we want to start in Europe or in Latin America?
Take your pick, right?
I mean, you know what? We Europe means we're going to talk about the Olympics. So let's start Latin America. Okay. Because last episode we did heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go.
Oh, okay. No. I was just gonna.
What's going on in Latin America? What's going on in Latin America this week?
Latin American things. You know, somebody's eating an empanada. You know, no. So this past weekend, right? And I'm using the world's biggest air quotes in the world. The elections happened in Venezuela, and things went about as expected.
You don't say.
I do say. I know you were shocked. Yeah. I know you were taken aback.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that country has been in turmoil for the last, I don't even know how many decades, Maduro, because I kept going to Chavez, Nicolas Maduro won, again, air quotes, won. Again, despite the fact that the majority of the country is experiencing extreme hardships, has been very vocal in their dislike of the president. To the point where, there are some Latin American countries, several Latin American countries have even called for like a recount. I mean, not that that necessarily means anything. And I mean, because, one country can't tell another country what to do, but it's like a vote of no confidence. There's been rioting in the streets. They've torn down some statues of Chavez, right? Because he doesn't have.
He represents the revolution,
right. And people everywhere are just calling for, again, by people everywhere I mean Latin Americans and Hispanics, because the rest of the world doesn't give a shit.
No,
as you so eloquently put it. And then of course, as our kind of friend of the pod, America Valdez was saying, and now cue all of the extreme leftists who are,
I have a lot to say.
Who are going to come out and say, as they love to come out and point to us, your lived experience is not true. So a lot going on in a relatively small country that has been in just constant turmoil over, again, how many decades has this? If we include Chavez,
Chavez, I think started
like the 90s,
in the 98.
So
in 98, and then during the Chavez years there were several coups.
Right. So we're talking about almost 30 years.
I mean, Venezuelans have you got to give credit to them. Venezuelans have really tried to get rid of this
seriously
parasite.
Yeah, they're not playing.
I mean, they really, really have. I mean, they have not sat idle, but I mean, they haven't been able to.
No, and again, it's been almost 30 years, right? Because you said 98.
98. I believe it was 98. It was like the late 90s.
Yeah, so it's about 30 years that they've just been struggling with this, and look, at the end of the day, neither you nor I are Venezuelan. So anything that we speak of is somewhat removed. But I think that when we approach this, we can apply our own experiences as Cuban Americans who saw this happening and saw this happening in a much less active way than the Venezuelans, because the Venezuelans, what we were just saying,
we've seen this story before.
We've seen this story before, but the Venezuelans are trying in a way that I don't think we saw our Cuban American, our Cuban brothers.
Different. It's different. It's different because I mean, it's similar but different because Venezuela, for all intents and purposes, is not still a communist country. For all intents and purposes, although on paper, but it is.
Yeah. The bare minimum, it's a dictatorship.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not an expert in the history of Venezuela, and I'm certainly not an expert even in the history of Cuba. I think the Castro regime was a lot more like, off with your head.
They were much more. Yeah.
Which these people have been tremendo sanguinarios as well. Yeah. But I think the chilling factor of the Castro years, especially initially, it was just kind of
set the tone.
It was different. Mm-hmm. But we have seen this story before because Venezuela had one of the most prosperous economies. Yeah. Up until the 90s.
Well, we have friends in Venezuela, and they, we went to Venezuela several times when I was a kid, and they.
¿Tú has ido a Venezuela?
Yo de Venezuela 2 veces.
A Caracas.
Yeah. A Caracas, Puerto La Cruz y Isla Margarita.
Yeah, wow. You know that I know the cities in Venezuela because of either when my parents used to watch Miss Venezuela, the beauty pageant. That's like, I know there's a section in Venezuela called Carabobo.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, there's always Miss Carabobo and Miss Venezuela. And, of course, en las novelas de Venevisión.
Verdad, de Venevisión, yeah. But,
y Super Sábado Sensacional.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But no, what I was going to say is, like, when we were going, ya las cosas estaban, like, getting... There was problems, economically, not necessarily because of Chavez. It was in the 90s. And there were people, they were friends of our friends who, they would tell the stories of, like, nuestros amigos fulano, like, cuando las cosas se empeoraron, se mataron. Because it was like economically they just went from here to the bottom, and they couldn't deal with it. And so, I mean, again, this is a country that has been, to your point, very, very prosperous, and also when things went bad, they went bad.
So,
he's clearing his throat, ladies and gentlemen. That means get ready.
So, this is my rant about Venezuela, and this is why this situation pisses me off for so many reasons. And this is going to be sort of the same rehash of the post that I made a couple of years ago on my personal, actually on our Instagram, regarding Cuba and the July 11th protest a few years back. What I find really interesting, especially now with these protests in Venezuela, is that everybody knew that this guy was going to cheat. They know that these elections are a sham. Everybody knows they are. The public knows they are. People in Latin America know they are. But obviously, there's always still an agenda with people who don't want to believe it. And what really bothers me, and specifically about what's going on with Venezuela, is that, and I posted about this on my personal
you shared on ours
Twitter and my personal Instagram, is that, you know, I run in more progressive circles, and, you know, I always see so many people that are social justice warriors fighting for people, fighting for equality and for equity, you know, which I agree with. But when it comes down to Venezuela, or it came down to Cuba, it's crickets. And this is why I'm so pissed off about this, and how so many people that go to social media to post about inequities here and inequalities here and injustices there, and, you know, all the things going on around the world, and they're all ready to go in March and, you know, putting all these posts up, but yet don't say anything about Venezuela. And the reason why it upsets me so much is because obviously there's already a narrative that, well, the U.S. is involved in these elections and the CIA is behind this, and this is just another form of the imperialist United States, you know, wanting to enforce capitalism, and that the people of Venezuela, you know, are a socialist state, and they're happy with Maduro, and, you know, they love their socialism. What bothers me about that narrative is that once again we fall into this trap of, you have millions upon millions upon millions of Venezuelans screaming, saying the living conditions in the oppressive government that they live under. The same way that us as Cubans scream out of the top of our lungs, everything that happens in Cuba. Yet some of you SOBs out there, you know, who are always talking about how we need to listen to people's lived experience, how we need to listen to victims, how we need to listen to women, how we need to listen to people that are LGBTQ, how we need to listen to BLM, how we need to listen to everybody, rightfully so. We need to listen to people, their trauma and their experience. But yet, when it comes down to Cuba or Venezuela, countries whose political defending the people will go against your political narrative and your political agenda, all of a sudden you're silent. So instead of listening to the people that are extremely vocal, right, and show you and tell you how they lived, you choose to ignore their lived experience because, you know, capitalism goes against your narrative. And as far as I'm concerned, if you are not willing to listen to somebody and their plight, and they're begging, you know, for freedom, and they're begging and they're yelling that they're being oppressed and that their living conditions are dire, if you're too busy pointing at, well, the United States this and the United States that, and capitalism this and capitalism that, then to me, you are no worse than those oppressors that you talk about, and those systems. You are just as bad at them, because you know what, when people need support of other people, and people need the help and the support to scream out the fact that there's injustice and the fact that there's inequity, it doesn't matter what your political narrative should be. You should support, and if you really are a social justice warrior, then support everyone who needs your help, not just people that fit your political agenda and your political narrative. So that's my rant. And all you social justice warriors that, you know, are staying silent about Venezuela and stayed silent about Cuba, I see right through you, and I know exactly, I read you, and I see exactly what you are. Because let's not forget that you and I, as Cuban Americans, when things were happening in Cuba in 2021, in July of 2021, we know firsthand, we know the living conditions in Cuba. How dare you come and tell me, right, a Cuban, I was born in Cuba. My family fled communism like millions of other Cubans. How dare you tell me that I'm wrong? How dare you, you know, not take into account the lived experience of millions and millions upon millions of Cuba because you don't like capitalism and you think the U.S. is imperialist. You know what? F you.
My favorite part of that,
welcome to coming from my TED Talk. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
My favorite part of that experience that you and I had with the posts about el 11 de Julio is, and I'm gonna, obviously I don't have it memorized, but I think somebody even said something like, because you had to leave your rich, like your rich family had to leave behind or something like that. And the beauty of that is that, number one, clearly they don't know you, right? Because they don't. I mean, they just don't know you. But if they did know you, they would know that. And please correct me. I believe the house that your parents either had or that one of your parents grew up in had like literally dirt floor.
My grandmother grew up in an orphanage.
Right.
And then they lived in a wooden house until the 70s, a wooden house that had a dirt floor. And then in the 70s, my uncle built the house out of cement and they added floors.
Right.
Right.
But you were rich.
Right. And they all lived together. Like my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle, my parents, they all lived together because they couldn't afford, even before Castro, they couldn't afford. They came from like really, really, I mean, they were very, very poor. And so was most of Cuba was very poor.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, like any country, Havana was, lavish and it was for people with more money, and, different parts of Cuba, different little enclaves where people with more money. But yeah, I loved when during the whole Cuba crisis a few years ago, you had these people who are like, the reason why you guys are upset is because, like prior to Castro, all of you had like servants and slaves and, you were all rich. And of course, you hated when socialism came around. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, really?
Spoken like a white person from the suburb who's typing at a Starbucks.
Yeah, really? Sean from Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Typing from a Starbucks.
Calm down, Blaine.
Yes. Chad. And let's not forget Rebecca with the purple hair.
Yeah. And it's 1 E and 2 Ks.
But yeah, it's like, you know what? It's just because, again, I've always said this. Whatever grievances you have against the U.S., that's on you. That's fair enough.
Right.
That's fine. The U.S. is not a perfect country. There's a lot of mistakes that have been done here. There's a lot of inequities here. So whatever grievances you have about the U.S., that's fine. You have a right to air your grievances. But again, when you have not two people, not a little faction of people, not extremists, when you have millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of Venezuelans here in the U.S. and around the world and in Venezuela telling you, hey, this is how we're living. These are the living conditions. There's oppression here. The government is in complete control. The government doesn't want to go. The government is cheating, and these elections are a sham, in addition to the living conditions that they have. If you refuse to listen to millions of people's lived experience, because it goes against your narrative of the U.S., whatever it may be, and your grievances against the U.S., then you know what? You're just as bad as everybody else. So don't come to me.
If not worse.
Don't come to me with your, outrageous and sort of your, fake like outrage, your selective outrage. That's what it is.
Right.
Selective outrage. Don't come with me with your... Don't come with me with your selective outrage, how you're such a social justice warrior and how you stand up for those that are oppressed and those, that suffer from inequities, because you don't. Because if you pick, right, if you pick who you're going to defend, and that part of your, if you will, selection process is your political narrative and whatever grievances you have against the U.S., you know what? You're just as bad as everybody else. You're not the social justice warrior you think you are. You're doing a great disservice to millions of people that are being oppressed and whose voices should be heard and should be amplified, and you're doing quite the opposite against those people. You are part of the problem, and you are oppressing those people just as much as their government is.
Wow.
I told you how to soapbox.
He dicho. Caso cerrado.
Yeah. I can't take that nonsense. I can't. I can't take it. I can't take it because, you know what? As Cuban Americans, we know what's up. So we know what's up. We know what it is. We know the reality. So when you hear some son of a bitch
who has no connection,
beat me, some son of a bitch who's read things online and who, has issues with the U.S., come and tell me. I mean, I'll never forget that I saw this account the other day, not the other day or some time ago, of this lady who's like, tremenda comunista, right? That lives in Cuba. Mind you, she's not Cuban, right?
So
she's European. Saying how, like, Cuba is full of fresh and organic food. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's organic because if you happen to raise a chicken in your backyard, in secret because you can't raise animals on yourself because, you'll get in trouble. I mean, that's organic.
I mean, yes, on paper.
I mean, it's not coming from a slaughterhouse.
Right.
I mean, if you're able to have una mata de plátano in your backyard,
yes,
I mean,
it's organic.
That's organic. So yeah, no, she is part right. Cuba does have access to organic food, but there's not a Whole Foods like
right. Yeah.
There's not a what's the Whole Foods brand 365.
365.
But the way that she makes it do that's like, for example, there's a lot of accounts online. I've seen them on Instagram and I showed them to my parents. And, it's very clever of people that are social media influencers in Cuba. Mm-hmm. And that you show them living in Havana. And it's like this great lavish
Cuban social influencers.
Yes. You see them going out to the restaurants. You see them going out clubbing. You see them, dressing up. Right. And I'm like, these people are either paid by the government or these people have some type of connection with the government, or maybe their parents are in the government, because these people don't live like your average Cuban lives.
Right. They're part of the tourism board or something.
Right? Yeah. They don't live like your average Cuban, but this is the image they're projecting to the world. And this is the example that those people that want to build and create that narrative that Cuba is a paradise, it's a socialist paradise, that everybody has free healthcare and, the literacy rate, what do we always say? Yeah, the literacy rate is great, but you can't read what you want.
Yeah. You can't tout that and then be upset about banned books in the U.S.
Right. Yeah.
There's a disconnect, sweetie.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
No.
That's a good point. So
yeah. Speaking of selective outrage, shall we board a plane and go to Paris?
Oui. D'accord. Oh, voyage à Paris, j'aime Paris.
Oh, I've never been to Paris, but I think that
vous ne pas travaillez Paris?
No. I've never been to France.
Oui. No. Oh, by the way, speaking of La France, totally disconnected to the Olympics. I had a client come in this week who was, she spoke Creole and she didn't speak a word of English. And I had to talk to her. And I was like, oh, well, we're going to get through. And I was able to have a conversation with her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes. And I was like, oh my God. But here we go. Écoutez, réfléchissez et parlez.
And you figured it out.
Oui.
There you go.
It's funny because, like, when I'm speaking French, and it really is how many years of Italian did you take?
2.
I took 5 of French.
Yeah.
I was pretty fluent in French, but then, I kind of lost it. But it is incredible how when you start speaking another language, like, even this conversation was 20 minutes. By the end of the conversation, I felt more fluent because it really is sort of locked in your mind back there.
It's muscle
like
memory.
if you left me 6 months in France, I would come back like,
you'd be good.
Yeah, je parle tout français.
Yeah. I feel that way sometimes with it. Like the more I listen to Italian, the more I'm like I pick it up.
But especially with Italian, that sounds so similar to Spanish.
Yeah.
I mean, again, right now, when I was in Italy a couple of weeks ago, if you talk slowly, you can have a full conversation with an Italian.
100%.
Like completely. Like I would understand probably 75% of what they were saying. That's enough to get by.
You're fine. I talk to people here in English that I understand less.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, I think 75% is good.
I talk to people here in Spanish and I understand less.
Yes, exactly.
There's some people, like mismo cubano, that I'm like, ¿qué tú dijiste?
That happened to Jose the other day because his dishwasher broke down. So the landlord, sent him Mandó un cubanito. He told me, he's like, I knew he was speaking Spanish because era un cubanito esto. He's like, but like 5 times I had to be like, ¿qué?
Yeah.
¿Qué? Because he said no way, and shit, I have to look for it. I'm gonna show you the picture that the guy has of his plumber thing. It's him holding a rooster.
That's awesome. I wouldn't expect anything less.
It's great.
I'll never forget years ago, I had a client of mine. He's like, no, chico, porque tengo que ir a hablar con la pura, porque no. I was offering him a settlement. He's like, no, pero déjame ir a hablar con la pura. And I'm like, la pura?
What is it?
I'm like, is that your nickname for like your girlfriend or something? La pura. He's like, no. Sí, déjame ir a hablar con la pura, a ver lo que ella piensa. La pura is the mother. A lot of them call
instead of mama?
a mama pura, la pura.
La pura.
And I was like, oh, okay.
I had never heard that in my life.
This is what we're calling it.
Okay. I mean, there are worse names for a mom, I guess, than pure.
Than pure. So, okay.
Yeah, so speaking of purity.
So, unless you were under a rock.
Yes.
The Paris opening ceremonies were this past Friday,
Which, by the way,
a week ago today.
The beef bourguignon, I said that horribly, was very yummy.
It was yummy. It was a little salty.
It was a little salty. But it was your first time making it.
It was actually my first time. I was actually quite proud of myself.
You should be.
Because that shit takes a lot of work.
I saw you.
My only error was that because beef bourguignon, you have to reduce so much. I mean, that pot was overflowing when I first did it the day before, and then by the time I served it, you saw that was sort of almost a glaze.
Yeah,
you reduce it so much that if it has too much, if you add a lot of seasoning to it, by the end you're going to be eating pure seasoning. So next time I do it, I'll season it less. I was sort of a rookie mistake. I should have known better.
Pero te quedó bien, te quedó rico.
But it was very French.
Yes,
and we had. So I had a little. I think I talked about it last week. I had a little. I always have like a little opening ceremonies, little get together every time the Olympics come around, and we had some beef bourguignon, we had some brie, we had
cream puffs.
What else did we have? We had some baguettes.
That's right. Some
French cheeses. Very delicious. Anyway, well, back to the opening ceremonies. So, unless you were living under a rock, you probably have heard about the whole controversy regarding the opening ceremonies, and particularly one scene where a lot of people were very upset that it was a mockery or depicted the Last Supper. So, obviously, I knew we were going to talk about it. My question to you is this, and I think I know the answer. We all watched it live, and it was a group of us who watched it. It wasn't one person. It wasn't just you and me. It was a group of us. We were like 10, 12 people. Did you interpret that as the Last Supper? Did you think that was the Last Supper when you were watching it live on television?
I didn't, but I will say this. And again, I'm gonna say this because the majority of the complaints, as far as I understand, are coming from the U.S. So based on what we saw, the way that the opening ceremonies was edited within an inch of its life, there were moments where I couldn't tell what the hell was going on one way or the other. So it was like I saw this thing of the drag queens, and there was a moment where I was like, "Oh, is this like is this some type of like iconography, right?" Like because I could tell that they were.
But you were when you mean iconography, like religious iconography.
I felt like it was homaging something. I couldn't figure out what it was, but the reason is because. Again, if you've ever met a drag queen cannot stay still longer than 3 seconds. And so they were, very purposely posed. The only reason I didn't think about the Last Supper is because nothing there visually prompted me to think the Last Supper, because not even the crown that the drag queen in the middle was wearing was
Which it wasn't a drag queen, it's a woman.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry, ma'am. But the one in the middle, like, it didn't give me Christ-like. It just gave me like, remember like the old medieval paintings of like the kings and things like that. So I didn't know what it was referencing, but it seemed like it was referencing something, like an artwork of some.
But you didn't necessarily think it was the Last Supper.
I didn't necessarily think the Last Supper.
12 of us saw that, and nobody thought it referenced the Last Supper.
Ironically, 12 of us saw something, and none of us saw a disciple.
Right. None of us did.
Right.
And among that, there were very practicing Catholics.
Yeah.
We had some people there that were very Catholic.
Yeah.
And then you had some that weren't not. But we were all Catholic to some extent. Right?
Catholic background.
Right.
Yes.
We all saw it. We saw it live. That didn't even cross my mind.
I didn't.
My father was watching it as well. And it didn't even cross his mind. Like I didn't.
And your father's very learned.
Yeah. I didn't think about it at all. When you see it live, when you see the moving,
tableau,
when you see the moving, like it live action, it doesn't look like the Last Supper. However, when you pause it at a certain point,
I could see it.
Then you can make the relation.
Right.
A lot of people that had a problem with it, and these are people that I knew, didn't see it live. They saw the picture the next day. They saw the meme.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So out of context.
So the next day, and I have to tell you that when I first saw it, while I didn't necessarily think at all of the Last Supper, I didn't necessarily think about it being
a bacchanalian Dionysus. Yeah.
I didn't think it was Dionysus or bacchanalian, which that's what it was. But that wasn't my thought either. I don't know. I just thought it was. And another thing is that in the picture that they used to make it a still, it looks like the brown part of the table looks like the front, whereas they really weren't sitting in a table. They were sitting in a runway.
It was a runway, yes.
But the way that it's paused, the way that they took the still of it,
it makes it
looks like a table. But they were in a runway. And the person in the middle, the one wearing the
blue
crown,
guy.
was a DJ. Was
the woman.
The woman that was wearing the crown was a DJ. That's why she had DJ equipment in front of her. And the people around her were just dancing around. So when the blue guy came out, I will tell you that when the blue guy came out, I was like, I didn't know necessarily again that it was a bacchanalian.
Yeah, he was Dionysus, right?
Dionysus. I mean, but I was like, I've seen this figure before.
This means something. Right.
I know this figure. I've seen this figure before. But again, I wasn't thinking Last Supper at all.
Right.
At all. The following day, when I wake up and all hell had broken loose, and Marco Rubio had already weighed in on it.
It's nice that he shows up for important things.
Right. I was, and then obviously the next morning everybody was saying, oh, it's a mockery of Christianity. Right. I was sort of like, maybe it was a mockery of Christianity. Or not a mockery, but maybe it was inspired by the Last Supper. But I'm thinking, the opening ceremonies of any Olympics are going to have, obviously, a cultural and historical presentation of the host country.
Of course.
And usually there are Greek elements in it. Because
it's Greek.
It's the Olympics. The Olympics are Greek. Let me just tell that to people again. The Olympics are Greek. They are from the Hellenic Republic.
Yes.
They are Greek. And specifically, they started in ancient Greece. Right?
Which predates Christianity.
Yes, which predates
to be
Christianity.
very clear.
In fact, it started, I think, in 1100 BC.
Right?
Way before.
And what does BC stand for?
Before Christ.
Okay, got it.
This is a little.
Got it. This is the learn section.
Right. But I was still trying to deconstruct it the next morning later when everybody was saying that it,
Well, because again, we don't know what the hell was in the mind of the creative director.
And again, the still shot, I could see the resemblance to the Last Supper, but I'm here like deconstructing it. I'm like, but like this is France and Greece. Like the French especially are like the proudest people of their culture. Like
why would they do the Italian?
Why would they refer to an Italian art piece? Like that's sort of what I was thinking, because the picture, the painting that we know of the Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci, he's Italian, which somebody had countered me with, like when I was talking to somebody I know about that was countering me, that I'm like, yeah, but the Last Supper is Italian. They're like, well, so is the Mona Lisa. And I'm like, right, but because the Mona Lisa,
but it's in the Louvre.
But I'm like, right, but the Mona Lisa is now synonymous with the Louvre in Paris.
Right.
So yes, it is originally by Da Vinci as well.
But when you go visit it, you visit it in Paris.
And it's an icon of France now.
Right.
So the Mona Lisa is now adopted French.
Yes,
right?
It's a French connection.
Yes, that's very well. So again, I was trying to decipher it. And then obviously the creators were like, it's based on a bacchanalian feast.
Right.
They showed the picture. They showed the god, Dionysus and all that. And I'm thinking like, okay, there's an explanation here. Okay,
Right.
The creators
are telling you.
The creators are telling you what it is. But I'm gonna go with okay. I could see the resemblance. I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. Okay.
Right.
I could see the resemblance. I know you're basing your opinion based on a still shot. You didn't see it live.
Right.
When you see it live, nobody saw it that way. Right. But I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Right. Okay. So the artistic creator, and both the president of the French Olympic Committee explained what it was, and they apologized. They apologized. They said, listen, we're not mocking Christianity. That wasn't our intention. But if you were offended by it, we apologize. We're really sorry. We would never do that. That's not what the intention was. Okay. What more do you want? Do you want them to be like beheaded with the guillotine? Do you want to continue the French, like cultural moment and be like, well, let's put you in the guillotine. There's nothing more French than that. Like, what?
Yes, because then you can also make it about John the Baptist, which is Christian.
What more do you want at this point? And mind you, I have my issues with the opening ceremony because, for example, I mean, we'll get there in a moment. I wouldn't have put the drag queens in the opening ceremony, and we'll get to that in a moment. I have my issues with the opening ceremony as a whole, but regarding this in particular, right? What more do you want? Like, okay, you got offended. They built a whole narrative about it. They explained what it was. They explained that it was, and they have apologized. They have given a formal apology.
Right.
Like, what more do you want? Like, people are like, I'm boycotting NBC and I'm boycotting the advertisers. I'm like, wait. Social justice warrior. First of all,
well, let's start off with the fact that nobody knows what it's going to look like until it airs. So the advertisers have zero to do.
Here's a fun story from somebody who knows about the Olympics. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, has absolutely no overview and no final editorial review of the opening ceremonies.
Oh, really?
They do not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The French Olympic Committee and the artistic director.
Okay.
The IOC does not know what is going to be in that program
until they see it live.
Until they see it. Right. Second of all, because to go back a little bit, and I posted this on my Instagram, there are many times in the past where there have been controversial moments in the opening ceremony.
Oh, yes.
For example, in 2004, in the Greek, in 2004, the Olympics were in Athens, which actually that is by far my favorite opening ceremony. 20 years later, it still holds up. I mean, if you have time to kill, go watch the opening ceremony of Athens 2004. It is incredible. Those opening ceremonies had a whole segment where they did sort of a very beautiful presentation and parade of Greek sculptures.
Yes.
So a lot of these people, they represented Greek statues. They had body paint, but the women were topless in body paint. The men weren't naked, but they were wearing a certain type of underwear that sort of pronounced their genitalia to look like a statue.
Right. It mirrored,
and people were outraged. People were calling the FCC that's pornography, that the children, and I'm like, this is the artistic, like, cultural representation of Greece.
Yeah, but you're arguing with people who have no time for art,
right? But nonetheless,
or education for them.
Going back to the argument at hand, the IOC doesn't have any editorial review of this. It does an NBC. NBC has no idea. NBC is seeing that for the first time
when you are,
let alone the advertisers,
right?
So you're boycotting all this, and the one you're really hurting are the athletes that have worked their entire life to get there. So that's who you're boycotting, because
who also have nothing to do with the opening ceremonies, right?
Everybody you're boycotting has nothing to. If you don't want to go to France, don't go to France, right? I mean, if you really want to boycott the opening ceremonies, just don't go to France. Don't go to France. Bypass France. Vive la France.
That's great.
But I mean, if you really want to boycott, don't go to France.
You're right. Yeah.
Because boycotting them, not watching them on TV, and being like, I'm boycotting the Olympics. Power. I'm boycotting the Olympics. I'm boycotting, Procter and Gamble. Okay, well, good luck with your body wash. I'm boycotting, General Motors. Okay, go give up your Silverado.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what people were talking about. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't understand. The moment that I saw that going down, I'm like, well, so I wonder how many politicians have already weighed in on this and made this like a whole political argument that it's not. This is another country. Like another country did this.
That's the thing about it. It has nothing to do with you.
It has nothing to do with the U.S.
It has nothing to do with... No. It has nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. You. And I am so tired of people with this mentality of like, I don't like something. Not my community, not whatever. I don't like something, so it must be vanquished. It's like, not everything is for you. Not everything is about you. Some things are not made for you, and that's okay. We don't give a flying fuck what you think. If you don't like it, you know how a TV works? There's a power button, right? you can just push that and it goes away. It's like magic, which you also don't believe in because you think that's the devil. But still, it's like magic. It's like magic. And I'm just so
Or you could just go to another channel.
I don't know, go watch TBN. But like, I am so over these people who it's just like, I don't like something and now I am so important that I must make my opinion known. And it's like, how sad and little is your life that this is what gives you power, or a feeling of power? Because it doesn't really give you any power. Let's be very clear. It's a feeling of power at most. So
I just think that it's.
I didn't like the opening ceremony as a whole, but
well, we're gonna get to that now. I just think that it's so much. It's a.
Did they have problems with? Because people also mentioned the Marie Antoinette and the thing that was representative of the goddess of the sea.
But that's we're gonna get to that now.
Okay.
I just think this whole thing with the Last Supper, it's so just so emblematic of where we are nowadays, that we make controversies of things that are not controversial. And when we make those controversies, when people apologize and say, hey, that's not what it is, we cancel them anyway. Because it's all about canceling and having a gotcha moment. Yep. And, something like that became political.
People are going out of their way to be offended.
It became political, and this shouldn't have gone political. If you have a right not to like it, you have a right to say, hey, you know what? I think that was in poor taste. I think that, maybe they shouldn't have put that on TV. I think that, it did, even if it wasn't supposed to look like the Last Supper. You know what it did? And, it made me feel uncomfortable. I don't think that should have been on television. And I think that, they should have been a little bit more careful on the images they were putting on. Fair enough.
But that's not how these conversations go.
Yeah, that's not how these conversations are going. So as far as the opening ceremony goes, I was so disappointed. And last week, if you rewind that episode, I was so excited.
You were.
There were moments that I loved. I loved the moment with the horse on the river.
Yes.
Was, I think, one of the best visuals I've seen in a long time.
The Eiffel Tower part was gorgeous.
The Eiffel Tower was, that light show and laser show was incredible. I got goosebumps watching that.
That was pretty.
And then, of course, everybody loved Celine Dion, which she was great. So those parts were great. The whole boat parade, the parade of nations on the boats that was just so long that didn't translate. Because you know what? Sometimes things sound very good on paper, but when you execute them, they're not as good. And they're even less good to a TV audience.
Yeah.
They did in this opening ceremonies, they did a lot of pre-recorded, moments,
like vignettes,
because they were building a narrative, they were building a storyline.
But I don't think it came across.
I don't think it came across at all. I thought that the part of Marie Antoinette I didn't care for it either.
Oh, I liked it. I liked that. I thought it was cool.
And as far, which I actually, this was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about regarding the opening ceremony, because a controversial part, even Last Supper or not, was the part with the drag queens. And look, I totally get this is France. And, this is what France
as
does.
Lumiere said.
This is what, by the way, this is France. I know it's France. I know it's French culture. I love French culture. I know that they like to be edgy and artsy and all that. So I totally get it. So, there was a scene, for those of you who didn't watch it, which was the scene where
it was a runway scene
where obviously France is the fashion capital. So they sort of did like a little runway, right? To kind of have a fashion moment. And there were a few drag queens on there. And the drag queens had a very prevalent, role in it. It's not like just the drag queen was hanging out there.
Right.
Did I get offended by that? Absolutely not. Was I like, oh, well, look at the drag queen on an opening ceremony? It's like,
go on, Nikki doll.
And obviously they were trying to go for inclusion and, again, France being edgy and all that. I certainly didn't have a problem with it. If I would have been the artistic director, I wouldn't have gone with that, because opening ceremonies, there's a general audience, and then there's the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games, because that's seen by 4 billion people around the world. So you're talking about the most general audience probably in existence, right? Different countries, different nationalities, different cultures, different ages, different understandings. Because here's another thing. I think when you design something like an opening ceremonies, I know you and I sometimes say like, well, if people understood art, well, if people understood literature, well, if people knew this, and you and I totally are always like on that.
We're those people, yeah.
But again, this is a very, very big audience that, you know what? Not everybody is going to understand French culture and French history or know it. So I think it's sort of a hard task to kind of present something that is culturally relevant, but something that is easily digestible and that most people will get, right? And as far as the drag queens go, I think, and I wouldn't even say it about only drag queens, even if it was two people for provocatively dancing, or two people, just certain performances that I think I wouldn't put in an opening ceremony, because not only can they be very misinterpreted like here, but I don't even want to say there's a time and a place, because I think that somebody doing drag is just somebody doing drag, right? But drag, as I think, and you know more about drag than I do, drag as commercial as it's become, it's still like a niche thing, right? As commercial as it's become, right?
So here's the thing. I can only speak to drag within the context of the U.S. And here's why I say that, because one of the drag queens that was prominently featured in the whole thing, and I think if you're going to feature drag queens, a fashion runway is the way to do it, right? Because to your point, it's like it's just somebody else walking down being fashion, right? Like, fashion, whatever. One of the drag queens featured was on Drag Race here in the U.S. She is French. Her name is Nikki Doll. She now currently hosts Drag Race France. Now, I preface all of this by saying that, as we know, when these ceremonies happen, you're striking that balance, like you said, of things that are for the bigger audience, and then there's things that are like, oh, look, the thing that's popular in France, right? Because they had singers there that we don't know who the hell they are, but they're French, maybe they're French icons, right?
And Lady Gaga.
Right, and then there's Lady Gaga. But what I say this because I don't know, maybe right now Drag Race France is like the biggest show in France. And so that was their way of, okay, it's having a huge moment right now pop culturally within our country. How do we incorporate it in a way that makes sense and not just like, here's a drag queen standing on the side of the screen, right?
No,
the incorporation at least made sense in so far as, Mira, I will say, before I have a problem with a drag queen, and again, France, listen, most people, one of the phrases most people can speak in French is menage a trois. Me, that I am not prudish at all. I felt a little more, like, ooh la la.
With the menage a trois?
With the menage a trois scene. That to me was more, I would understand more people being upset about that
than thought.
Everything else.
Remember when that was happening?
Yep.
Do you remember I said...
You certainly did.
I was like, oh, well, people are going to be talking about that tomorrow.
Right. And nobody did.
And nobody talked about it.
Nobody did.
And again... That doesn't offend me. That doesn't offend you. But those are things that, and again, I know you were trying to make, have like, and another thing about France and these opening ceremonies is that France, I mean, they did this was on purpose. There's thinking outside of the box, and then there's decimating the box. The box was nowhere the box was nowhere there.
No.
I mean, you know what they even did?
They sent it to recycling.
You know the cauldron, that it's a hot air balloon?
Yes.
It's not fire.
What is it?
It's a water vapor.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, that's the first Olympic cauldron that doesn't have fire. And my question was, as somebody who was like an Olympic historian, I'm like, so what did they do with the flame? Because
where'd it go?
The Olympic charter says that the flame has to be lit for the Olympics.
So where's that? Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm hoping, I think that there is like a small little...
Like a mini cauldron.
Kettle somewhere with the Olympic flame, because the cauldron, which is the hot air balloon, which I thought was a terrible idea, it's water vapor. It's lit water vapor.
Wow.
Which when they turned it on, I don't know if you remember me saying, I'm like, that doesn't look like fire. At that moment, I didn't know it was water vapor. Right. I'm like, that doesn't look like fire, because it's not.
It's not.
So they broke every rule and every protocol there was.
Yeah.
The box doesn't exist. So you have to take that in the totality of like when you're being critical of the opening ceremonies. I again, there's always going to be people that criticize you. Every single opening ceremony, every Olympics always gets some criticism of something. I just think that you have to be very careful, because again, there's people in the world who probably don't even know what drag queens are. right?
That's fair.
So, and it's not a.
Those people probably would have just been like, that woman looks very masculine.
So, I mean, when you're using something like that, these are very, very general audiences. So I think the challenge is, how do we make this culturally relevant and fun and exciting? But we have to also appeal to everybody. And, you work in PR, that's a very hard task to do.
It's near impossible.
Appealing to everybody. And that's sort of what an opening ceremonies has to do. That's why it's so difficult to, and there's always criticism of it. I that's not the route I would have not taken most of the routes they took.
Yeah, seriously.
But that's probably, as the artistic director, I probably would have been like, if I want to do a runway show, I would do something like iconic, like iconic French designers, like maybe iconic designs. Christian Dior's
Dior, Chanel, Gaultier,
right? Like some of like their iconic designs. Like that's probably the way I would have gone, because those are things that are very French, but they're very recognizable.
Yes, yeah. Like everybody knows a Chanel suit,
right? They're very recognizable. Right. So something like that. I mean, but
you could have had a drag queen wear a Chanel suit.
But live, laugh, learn.
All of so vive la France.
So vive la France. Well, I have actually some sort of interesting, as we wrap up the show. But as I said, once I start talking about the Olympics, I know.
Pero primos, I'm trying to rein them in. I'm here trying to rein them in.
So some fun facts about the Olympics.
Okay.
Do you know in the Americas what country in the Americas, so this means North and South America, which country has the most Olympic medals? It's easy.
We're going from Canada down to Brazil?
Yes.
U.S.?
Yes. Do you know after the U.S. what country has the most Olympic medals? I did not know this. This actually surprised me.
Okay, the fact that you said that makes me want to go for like one of the tiny countries, like El Salvador.
Cuba.
Really?
Cuba has 235 Olympic medals. Coño. The first time they appeared in the Olympics was in 1900. In Paris, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The Olympics in Paris have been in 1900, 1924. Mira, that's something else. Paris is only the second city to have hosted the Olympics 3 times. They hosted in 1924, exactly 100 years ago. Shit. It would have been nice if they would have had some homage to that, and they didn't. Cuba. I was really surprised at that.
Wow.
It is the second country in the Americas after the U.S. So I pulled up some facts. So Cuba has 235 medals, 84 gold medals, 69 silver, and 82 bronze. Oh, yeah. Of those 235 medals, 78 are in boxing.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
Followed by athletics and wrestling.
What's athletics?
Like track and field.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that. Everything that happens there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 78 in boxing, 235 medals. I would have thought that after the U.S. and the Americas, in the Americas, after the U.S., it would have been either Canada, Mexico, or Brazil.
Yeah.
But no. Mexico has 75 medals. Argentina has 77. Brazil has 153. Puerto Rico has 10. Venezuela has 19. Colombia has 34. And Peru has 4.
Oh, wow.
And then the rest of the other countries have less than that.
Yeah. So,
but I was like, really? Cuba has 235 medals?
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, well, están ganando los cubanos en boxeo.
So we know who's getting the food on the island.
So I just thought that was an interesting little factoid
tidbit.
Of the Olympics. So, Wow, I can't believe it's already back to school time. Let's see. That means new clothes, new supplies, return of bedtime routines, and for many kids, that also includes a school physical exam. Don't worry, Dr. Goodprice has you covered on that last one. Open until 7 p.m. on weekdays and 3 p.m. on Saturdays, you won't need to take time off from work. And the average wait time at Dr. Goodprice is only about 30 minutes, even with every appointment being a walk-in. Oh, and did we mention that school physicals are just $30? Medical care for your kids is important, but it shouldn't be at the cost of your time and money. Dr. Goodprice believes everyone, especially kids, should be able to get affordable medical care on their time. Visit drgoodprice.com today for more information and services.
Oye, pero primos, you saw our 300th episode, so you know we handle hot sauce a little better than we thought. And when the flavors are as robust as Babaro Mojo, we are definitely on board. Barbaro Mojo was founded by a father and son on Nochebuena. I mean, you can't get any more Cuban than that, right? When they took their traditional mojo marinade up a notch with some spicy heat. They've got 4 great flavors, like el habanero and the award-winning jalabao. But our fave is definitely el piñazo, which combines pineapple with habaneros and Fresno peppers for a sweet and spicy experience. And if that's not enough, Pero Primos, visit barbaromojo.com today and use code PERO25 for 25% off your order. Now that's the kind of thing we consider hot. Así que don't wait. Visit barbaromojo.com today and use code PERO25 for 25% off your order of sweet, spicy, and irresistible Cuban hot sauces. ¡Que bárbaro! Well, Barbaro Mojo, that is. All right, everybody. Now, I know normally this is the time when we get thirsty and we we have our last soda, but we are partnering with Barbaro Mojo. As you guys saw a couple weeks ago, I posted on Instagram. It's a new partner that we're working with. They have Cuban-inspired hot sauces, and they're actually really good. And I know you guys saw us on episode 300, trying our best with the hot sauces, and so we've proven we can tolerate hot sauces, especially these with which have a Cuban kick to them. So, in lieu of the last soda for the next couple of weeks, we're actually going to be awarding to El Bárbaro de la Semana. Brought to you by Barbaro Mojo.
That's awesome.
I mean, could it be any much of a better fit?
I mean, who doesn't want to talk about El Bárbaro?
El Bárbaro.
The Barbaro.
The Barbaro. Yeah, it doesn't translate. That doesn't translate to English. No.
The barber.
No. So do you want to start with your Bárbaro? Or
no, you can start with yours. I've talked a lot.
All right. So my Bárbaro of la Semana is actually somebody who I didn't think I'd be giving a recognition to, much less for the reason I'm about to. So this week's Bárbaro for me is actually Flavor Flav.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, Flavor Flav is a rapper. Actually has a very long rap career, but is also known for his stint on reality TV, where, as people say, it's like people don't remember there was one time a reality dating show and the prize was Flavor Flav.
Yeah.
And it gave us,
New York.
It gave us New York. It gave us, him and Brigitte Nielsen. It gave us school, Charm School and all Flavor of Love and all of that. But
I mean, that was a franchise. That was really
nobody
a franchise.
saw coming.
Well, yeah, whoever thought that was Flavor Flav was going to have all those
spin-offs
of spin-offs.
Yeah,
but
seriously. But so Flavor, we love Flavor Flav. I mean, he's fun and he's as I like to think he's kind of in on the joke, right? So it's all in good fun. He actually just recently signed a 5-year sponsorship with the Ladies United States Olympic Polo Team.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Back in May, the captain of the team, she posted on Instagram how they were having troubles, with financing, and some of the athletes on the team had to take other jobs to sustain it. And Flavor Flav said something to the effect of as a girl dad and as somebody who really supports and appreciates women's athleticism, I'm here for you guys. And I mean, it's a 5-year sponsorship, so I mean it's a commitment. It's not just here's a check. It's long term, and part of it is he does promotional appearances, and he's really there to just support the team in every way he can. And I thought, again, here's somebody who started his career one way, then took another left turn into reality TV. Like we just said, who the hell would have ever thought 75 spin-offs with Flavor Flav from reality TV, and yet is continuing to actually use his celebrity in a very positive way. And that's why I say I think he's quote unquote in on the joke, and that's why we can all appreciate him. But the fact that he stood up to this challenge, I mean, nobody asked him to, right? Yeah. He made the decision. That makes him a Bárbaro de la Semana as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, it's really awesome that he did that, and I don't want to say unexpected, because a lot of these celebrities, their public persona is one thing, but them as a human and their humanity is another thing. But I'm glad that he put his celebrity and the fact that he does have a platform for something so positive in helping the team out. So when I read that or heard about that a few days ago, I was so happy to hear that.
Same.
So yes, he deserves all the sazón,
all the hot sauces
that he could get. Tremendo bárbaro. So I mean, we again have had an Olympic themed episode this week, because my last soda is Olympic related as well.
Oh, okay.
In addition to having spoken about the Olympics again in today's episode, but as I warned listeners last week, once you start me with talking about the Olympics, I can't stop.
It's your version of Pringles.
which we could add some babaro
as a hot sauce to
as
it
a hot sauce to Pringles.
Yes.
I mean,
why not?
Why not with Pringles? That's a good one. Anyway, so I really want to, this would be the learn section of today's episode. And I really want to talk about an event that happened in the Olympics in 1968 that a lot of people know part of the story, but they don't know the whole story. And that was the now iconic picture from the 1996 Olympic Games with Tommy Smith and Giancarlo, two American athletes who were African-American, who raised their fists wearing a black glove during the national anthem. And this is a very iconic picture, as I said. Everybody knows this picture. They were subsequently banned from the Olympics, from the IOC banned them for life. And they certainly paid a heavy price for that. And obviously they were treating the way that African Americans were being treated by the IOC and during the Olympics, and back home specifically. Actually, you know what? That's incorrect. Let me edit this out. So my Bada goes today to a story or individuals that I really would like to talk about and shed a little light to. And it is Olympic related. I want to take you guys back, and this is the learn part of the show. I want to take you back to the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. And one of the most iconic pictures of all time regarding the Olympics came out of those games, which was the picture of Tommy Smith and John Carlos from the United States, who after winning the gold and bronze medal, raised their hands in a fist wearing a black glove during the national anthem. And they were protesting, obviously, civil rights and the way that black athletes were still treated back home and the inequalities. But in that picture, there's another person who is the person who won the silver medal, which is Peter Norman of Australia, that often gets overlooked. Peter Norman in that picture was wearing a button on his tracksuit that was for human rights. And prior to the three men going up to the podium to get their medals, Giancarlo and Tommy Smith asked them, "Do you support us?" And Peter Norman said, "I support humanity and I support human rights." And he wore that button in sort of joint protests with them. And Peter Norman, he said he won the silver medal, and he set like a huge record for the Australian Olympians insofar that like his time was not broken by another Australian Olympian for decades. And just like Giancarlo and Tommy Smith were sort of banned and ostracized after this event, so was Peter Norman. He wasn't acknowledged by the Australian Olympic Committee. He didn't participate in any future Olympics, even though he still had one of the greatest records in his sport. And it was so bad that in the year 2000, when the Olympics were in Sydney, Peter Norman was not asked to be part of any major Olympic event. Oh, wow. He did do some sort of smaller scale events, but usually prior Olympians from that country, when their country hosts the Olympics, they'll be part of the torch relay. They'll have like a very big role in the new Olympics, and he was not part of it. He was completely ostracized by the Australian Olympic Committee for wearing this human rights button and supporting Tommy Smith and Giancarlo. And he died, I believe, in 2010, 2011. And it wasn't until after he died that the Australian government officially gave him an apology, apologized to him and his family for him having been treated the way that he was. He was seen as a pariah, for ultimately standing up for human rights and for what was right. And I think it's a really telling story. And when he died, his pallbearers were Giancarlo and Tommy Smith. So I just thought that was such a noble sort of, thing he was in. And, many times, obviously, John Carlos and Tommy Smith, because they were African Americans, and they did risk everything for that moment. We talk about them in the story, rightfully so, but many times we don't talk about Peter Norman in the story. And again, I just thought that it was so brave of him to do that, and he also paid a price for that. And I just thought it was such a telling story of the time and where we are, that the Australian government actually had to apologize to him. So I want to give my last my barbaro status this week to him, because I thought it's definitely a story worth sharing and worth telling.
What I think is most fascinating about that story is, I mean, obviously thank you for sharing it with us, but is that the irony involved, right? Because we're talking, and again, look, you and I can sit here and talk about the IOC and all of its bullshittery, till the cows come home. But for a event that is supposed to be about unifying the world and bringing everybody together, to ostracize someone for daring to wear a pin that is in lockstep with that, is the height of irony. Yeah.
I mean, look, as much as I love the Olympics and the Olympic movement, the IOC is a very political and organization that, I have a lot of disagreements with many times historically as a whole. But I just think that, the amount of crap that man got for ultimately supporting the movement, and all he wore was a button.
Right. He didn't quote unquote do anything.
I mean, he didn't do. I mean, it wasn't his national anthem. Also,
right.
But again, if you watch interviews, because Tommy Smith and John Carlos have given a lot of interviews about obviously that event, and when they talk about that day and what they did, I believe it was actually Peter Norman who even gave them the gloves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so all three were very in on it.
Okay.
Though obviously the other two are the face of it, rightfully so. But I just thought what he did was very brave. And he didn't have to do that. He could have just stood there, gotten his silver medal, and just gone on with the show. But, it's moments like that define your character. And, there's been some controversy also. The Australian Olympic Committee has said that, no, he wasn't ostracized and he didn't compete in the 1972 Olympics because he didn't qualify. The point is that he never got the merit while he was alive. He never got the merit he deserved in terms of the ability he had in the sports and the records that he broke. And, it's not coincidental. And again, when the Olympics were in Sydney in 2000, I think he did some press for it, but he wasn't.
He broke a record. They very well could have had him be a torchbearer.
He should be considered one of the greatest Australian Olympians of all time, because he had a record that stood for a very long time, and he isn't. When you talk about the greatest Olympians of all time of Australia, he's generally not in that conversation. And just in his athletics alone, he should be. Now, he comes up many times now for this reason, but not for the athleticism of it. So again, they'll say that, well, no, but he wasn't. But he kind of was, because he could have been the face of the sport, and he wasn't. So that's why you ask yourself. And then, he didn't really have a very successful career after that, because a lot of people didn't want to deal with him.
Sponsors.
He was blacklisted. And, again, it's very unfortunate. And again, that story has always fascinated me, because I always like a lot of people, that picture always intrigued me. And I always wondered who that guy was. Like, who's that white dude just standing there? Because, again, he's wearing a button, but if you don't know about the button that he's wearing, you won't know what it is, right? And I was just like, I wonder what that guy had to say about it. And then, obviously, because I love the Olympics, and you could say I'm an Olympic historian, when I found out about this story, I was like, wow, this is such a great story to tell. I am glad, however, that probably in the last 10 years, this has got, after he died, because he died in like 2010, 2011. It hasn't been that long. After he died, he's gotten, unfortunately, it took him to die. But this story has gotten finally some recognition. So,
well, those are our two, maybe 4 Barbaros of la Semana, because you could make the argument that your story had 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
It had 3.
Absolutely.
So definitely, Flavor Flav and the
Peter Norman and Tommy Smith and John Carlos, all Olympic related. There we go. Anyway, everybody, we hope you listen, laughed, and learned. And as always, remember to grab your pastelito, your croqueta, and your cafecito. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
All right, cuídense, mi gente. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.